Floppy Waffle 69 here, and welcome back to the channel. Today we are starting a brand new Down the Line series. Yes, we are going down the line of the UK destroyers. That would be what crowning the branch, the HMS Daring. Now, I know I haven't done a down the line series in a while. Obviously, I've been a little bit busy, a little bit preoccupied doing other videos, especially because we have with the in the name of tomorrow event going on with some serious reward ships that are on the table for you guys to hopefully go ahead and complete tasks and unlock those ships for free, that being the San Diego and the GQ Johnny. But now, instead of hitting, on the content that is like the latest in the game, I'd rather we go back a little bit and look at some older content, and they'll discuss about why these ships are just so great and actually why we're doing this down the line series. As you know, I've already done multiple down the line series. I've only ever done one other down the line DD line, and that was the Soviet DD line. Crowning off would be the Delny, and the reason I did that line was because that line from a top-down format was fundamentally changed and altered just a tad bit. A lot of those ships got a lot of love, and changed a little bit about, changed a little bit about the way that they are presented in game, the way that they're played a little bit, which I do very much enjoy those DDs. But I kind of told you my overall opinion of the tier 10 was that it didn't feel as good and rewarding as it did compared to like the tier 9. The Tashkent was just phenomenal. I really did enjoy and love that ship. But I think the Delny isn't bad. It just, for me personally, it just wasn't as fun, especially coming from someone who absolutely adores the Habarovsk. I was like, I don't know. This kind of feels like a step down, in just my opinion. Um, but I have not done another DD line, and I was thinking, well, the reason I did that DD line was because of the recent changes it got. But I guess all the other lines, going from like the cruiser line with the Furtaka down to the Zhao, and then the New York down to the Montana, those are all lines that I would recommend respectively are like good introductory lines to, battleships being the Montana and to cruisers being the Zhao. I think that they really do teach the foundations of what makes that class its own and what kind of distinguishes it a little bit. Yes, obviously they have their niches, but I think overall it really does encompass a lot of what we look for in regard of homing our skills if you have no experience whatsoever or just starting off the game. I recommend those two lines. So then we get to the destroyers. And since I haven't really done an introductory DD line, I think it's time, or about time, we start that. And of course, as you see on the screen before you and what I've already said, going down the line to the Daring, I believe the Daring to be, in my opinion, the best introductory DD line in the game to do. And you're probably, shitting a brick right now if you're an experienced player, someone who's been around the block saying, whoa, 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 why are you not recommending like the Gearing? And why are you not recommending, of all ships, the Shimakaze? Well, I think the Gearing is a good competitor to what I'm about to say. And I definitely think there's nothing wrong if you start with the Gearing line in total. I think it's a pretty good introductory line too. But I wouldn't put it as quite as high, or right now, I'd put the Daring above it still. And the reason I put the Daring is because the Daring for me, and I'm not just taking the tier 10. I'm looking at the entire line as like a solid foundational, like a fundamental foundational line. I just think the line for each ship at its respective tier is going to offer a more fun play style that's going to be more intriguing towards entry level players. And it's going to teach them a lot about the basics of the game. Obviously, the big thing that this line has, in my opinion, is it has that kind of get out of jail free card with the smoke screens. It has I think it's what, 5 or 6 bays. I have to do my research on that. 5 or 6 bays puffs or charges of these shortened duration smoke screens, which are fantastic to fall off detection for about 30-40 seconds, farm, do what you need to do, and then you go back into the fray. And your smoke screen's only down for like, 30 seconds or something like that as well. It's very user friendly is what I'm trying to say. And I think that alone, coupled with usually these ships have relatively good stealth and they come with the hydroacoustic search. They have pretty damn good DPM. Their torpedoes aren't a slouch either. I just think all in all, the package in itself is just better than that of ships like the United States Navy. For example, like I love the Farragut, but I think the Farragut, with its higher concealment value and its torp range, kind of underneath that of its concealment value is a little tougher to play. The Mahan, same thing. Its detection, pretty high to play. People really don't know what they're doing it with that thing. People get frustrated at the Benson because it's super fast and its torpedoes are reasonably slow. Not really anymore, but reasonably slow. Its gunpowder is great, but like again, they're kind of confused until they get to the Fletcher. And by then, they haven't really been focused too much on learning the ships and learning DDs. They've been more focused on getting to higher tiers to get through those said ships. You kind of see what I'm saying what I'm trying to say at least. I know I'm kind of speaking relatively quicker, and I say a lot of thoughts that come to my mind. But it is true. What I'm trying to say is something that's coming from an experienced player, that's coming from someone who's played the game a long, long time. And I learned a lot, and I'm trying to shed this knowledge upon the player base, because it's something that I wish I would have known back when I started the game, right? So obviously, when I started, they didn't have the Royal Navy DD line, but now you have it. So if you're relatively new to the game, you want to start DDs, this would be my recommendation to you. So anyways, like we always do on this channel, we are going to do the port analysis first. And if you're new to the channel recently and you haven't seen one of these down the line series yet, videos, basically what this series is I'm going starting at tier 5, going down to tier 10, and I'm doing a review on each ship. And we're trying to build and sharpen our sword and learn basically from each tier what this line's identity is and how to play each specific ship, how to build each specific ship. And then when we get to the crown jewel at the tier 10 mark, then we can go ahead and talk about everything we've learned from each specific tier to get us to this final product. So usually the tier 5 is a little bit of a longer video, so I do apologize for that. And obviously, usually it is a bit of a not as interesting of a review because it is a little measly tier 5, but for some of us who really do enjoy the game, I think it's a very good tier to start off for multiple reasons. I always talk about that there's two, potentially three big major jumps in the tech tree and in the entire game of the learning curve, and also the skill curve that you want to call it. The first major one is here at tier 5. Below it, you kind of have this more shooty boats mentality play style that people really don't pay too much mind to the strategy, and gimmicks aren't really enabled or really been set in stone yet for their lines. And I think tier 5 is the very first tier that all this stuff starts melding together. Okay, the next big jump, in my opinion, would be around the tier 7, tier 8 mark. This is when you get introductory premium behind like radar and certain stuff like that, main battery reload booster for some cases, but that's more like what, tier 6 potentially with like the French cruisers and DDs. There's a big jump around the tier 7 mark. So I'd probably say tier 7 is the next really big mark. Also, not to mention tier 5's also, when going back to tier 5, tier 5's also one of those tiers that you actually get rid of that protective matchmaker and you get that absolutely frustrating +2/-2 matchmaker to deal with. So that's another big reason why I like starting at tier 5. And the last big jump for me, and I thought long and hard about this, but I think the next big jump is actually going one tier up, and it's tier 8, because now you can go into the tier town realms and you can really see the finished product of what you're potentially trying to grind for. So that's why these down the line series, I try to stay around tier 5, or start at tier 5 and work my way up to the respective tier 10. And for those questioning about my decision to stop at tier 10 and not going up to super ships, I will down the road use super ships, though I am not a fan with the way they're implemented into the game. I kind of wish there should be their own separate game mode. I think there should be more restrictions on them, yada, yada, yada. I will eventually cover them. Just right now, I want to focus on what I like to call the base tiers 5 through 10. And then eventually I'll do like super ship dedicated videos to those respective ships and do a full design on those things, or a deep dive analysis on those as well. Because I do think at some point in time, you should probably get your hands on at least one super ship at a very minimum. If you're like me, I really just collect them and only play them around the anniversary event and around Christmas time, because they usually offer like snowflake rewards you can knock off for steel, research, bureau points, etc. Other than that, I really don't play them, just because I find them incredibly frustrating and an insult to the rest of the players playing the game, and really kind of make the game unfun, in my opinion. And I'll get to that in a way later video, when I'm talking about the specific said ships, of what we call super ships in this game, or tier 11s. Okay, but anyways, bringing us back to the Acasta, like we always do, we're going to do our port analysis first, go over some stats, kind of illustrate the package you're going to be getting. And then I'm going to go ahead and show you a game and then do my final thoughts on the ship while we're at the tail end of the game I'm showcasing. Again, the game isn't anything to, anything too shiny or anything bragging or anything like that. It's just a standard run-of-the-mill game. This is like the no bullshit channel, guys. I'm just going to show you gameplay footage, not cherry picking it. And this is around the realms of probably what most of you players will be able to achieve. Again, if you perfect the ship you're playing in, of course you can get much higher. I don't really care upon the outcome of the game. If it's a loss or if it's a win, it doesn't matter to me. What matters is I'm just showcasing the strengths and the weaknesses of the ship, and we're talking about them and addressing them. That's all it is. So without further ado, guys, let's go ahead and get into the actual port analysis part of the video. So first things first, we're going to go over the armor layout like we always do in our ships when we do the port analysis. As you can see, it is a 10 millimeter coated armor scheme completely everywhere around the ship. This is pretty standard, guys. This is just a balancing feature so that other DDs, when they fight with their smaller caliber guns, they can pen one another. It's really not a big deal. So nothing to write home about with the armor scheme of the Acasta. And that being said, I'll just flat out mention this going forward. The remainder of the line, yes, the armor millimeter threshold might increase based upon its tiers, but it's always going to stay at the realm where every DD and its name and right will be able to pen you for balancing purposes. So there's not going to be anything major or noteworthy about the armor scheme that we really need to cover in this down the line series. Moving into the survivability of the ship, yes, it is coming in or clocking in 11,200 HP. Again, that is pretty standard, I guess pretty in the middle, if that's what you want to call for this tier. The highest being the Jaguar at 16,600, and at the low end, I believe you're getting like the Kalmar and the Visby at that 9,600 mark. So you're right in the middle, right there, kind of middle to low if you really want to get specific. So again, is that a factor in your playstyle? Yeah, for me, when a ship has lower HP, usually it means, hey, I want to make sure I utilize my stealth and fire from my smoke to avoid taking damage. If you have a heal or if you have a higher HP pool in regards of the remainder of the ships, usually that means that they're trying to tell you that you can get away with firing more openly or doing more open gunboating rolls. A little bit easier is basically what that's trying to tell me as a player of the game and someone who's been in the game for a while. Obviously, if you really want to get specific, you could say, well, the Kalmar and the Visby, or not, yeah, the Kalmar, does it get a heal? I think the Kalmar gets a heal. I'm not 100% sure. And I think maybe the Visby does too, because they don't have smoke screens because they're pan-European. So if you really want to etch them off and say, well, they might have the lowest HP pool, but they get a heal, so like really kind of nullifies itself. Yeah. Yeah. And if that's the case, you can say, well, then the Acasta is on the lower end of the HP pool. And that's fine too. It's just something that I'm trying to factor in when I'm thinking of all these different things and looking at the ships listed out all together and fire off some facts to you guys. Again, if I'm wrong about anything, just go ahead and shoot it in the comments. Again, this is more of a discussion channel than it is like, hey, what I'm saying is fucking fact. And if you don't agree with my opinion, then fuck you. That's not what this channel is all about. At the end of the day, I think we're just trying to have a debate and talk about, specific things about specific ships. And then kind of work in unison and kind of help each other out with the specific builds and whatnot. Because I definitely think there's not like a one way to rule them all kind of deal, way to play certain said ships. I think there's multiple ways you can at least attempt to play ships, and then in a consensus come to the conclusion of, hey, this is definitely a more fun build. Hey, this is definitely more of a competitive build, and try to find that happy medium between the two. That's kind of what I think. So moving on to the artillery. This is the 4x1 120 millimeter guns. These are reloading in about 5 seconds and have a 180-degree turn time of 18 seconds. I want to make note of this. The 180-degree turn time of 18 seconds is noticeable. There will be at times that it feels like an eternity for DDs with turning its guns. So you're gonna have to swivel A and D a lot in order to get your guns to bear. Just keep that in mind when you're playing the ship, because if you're just waiting for your turrets to turn without maneuvering your vessel, it's going to take a long time. And then that being said, the enemy destroyer, depending on who you're firing, can already fire 2, 3, 4 salvos at you in the span of it's taking you to turn your turrets all 180 degrees. You're definitely going to want to maneuver appropriately as well in order to get your turrets to bear quicker. Maximum range is clocking in at 11.1. Again, when it comes to the gun range of a destroyer, especially a DD that really prides itself around being a stealthier, I really don't care as much. Obviously, this number, depending on the way you play these ships, will change and be altered as you climb up the tech tree because the daring, the Jutland, all that have to actually, well, not really the Jutland, but the daring has pretty damn respectable DPM for its tier and is incredibly strong at what it can do with its guns as well as its torpedoes. And I definitely consider it more of a hybrid, leaning more towards the gun side of things than I do the torpedoes. And again, we'll talk about this all later on as we continue to climb down this line or climb up this line, whatever way you want to look at it. But yeah, especially starting off at a tier 5 level, 11.1 is more than enough that you can utilize and make use of. You don't really need any more range than that, so I don't really recommend specking, what is it, the I guess it's not advanced gunfire training, whatever the fuck it used to be back in the day, but the one that extends your main battery range. You don't really need that in my opinion. I would just focus more on trying to decrease your reload and making sure that if you are spotted, like what Fearless Brawler, for example, you can really dish out the pain if you are detected, especially when you're engaging other enemy destroyers. That's kind of what this thing is trying to, what I'm trying to do when I play this ship, at least. Going into the high explosive shells, you do have the 1700 maximum damage with the 8% fire that can go ahead and pen 20 millimeters of armor with an initial velocity of 808 meters a second. Now, it is worth keeping note and making note of the high explosive shells on this daring line. Mixed with the DPM the line does reasonably have. Again, it depends, it varies on each ship. The fire chance is phenomenal for this specific said DD line. And you're going to notice that you're going to be starting a lot more fires than other DD lines, especially when you climb up the ranks and the line like with the Daring, for example, because that ship fires very quick, or 2 point whatever quick. I mean, with 8% fire chance and your reload of, what is it, like 5 seconds, I believe, you're getting about a 3.8 fires per minute, which again, you have to remember, this is tier 5, so this isn't tier 10 standard, so just tailor down your expectation to a tier 5 level. But I'm telling you, that's actually pretty respectable for what you're going to be able to do. It is on the higher end of the fire setting potential. Obviously, you have all your French DDs at this tier that have the 9%. And then you have your Gremiashi at 9% as well, because that is a very strong DD. And then you have your Acasta right there at 5. So it's in the top 5 fire setting potential, and it is directly tied with the, I'm not even going to try the name, but the Pan-European tier 5 starts with an M. I think it's like a Turkish DD. That is clocking at an 8% fire chance as well, with a 3.8 fires per minute. So it's not bad, guys. You will notice that this is quite the little fire starter for its tier, and this is going to be a trend you're going to be seeing the entire line as well. Going into the armor piercing, you do have a maximum damage of 2100 with, again, an initial velocity of 808 meters a second. So there's going to be no change between the AP and the HE. As long as you got that lead down for both, you should be fine hitting your targets. I will keep this in mind, and I will take note of this, or make a mental note of this, and just tell to you guys as well. The armor piercing on these ships is really, really good, and I believe it is starting at the Jutland. You actually get a shortened fuse time with it. Because you have the 113 millimeter guns from the Jutland to the Daring, which are smaller gun caliber for the tier, even for DD standards, you're going to actually want to make use of the armor piercing because it's going to be short fused. You're going to get more full penetrations and just flat out do more damage, especially to very lightly armored targets, which is, again, making this thing very, very scary, especially if you're another DD. This is like the original, I'd call SAP shell. Back in the day, that obviously now there is a semi-armor piercing shell that's kind of overshadowed it. But that being said, this thing is quite demented. So just keep that in mind. You're going to want to be using both shell types. And again, it's going to be coming down to you as the player. Again, another good learning platform to know and teach you when and when not to shoot armor piercing HE in your destroyer. So very good mental note there for you guys. Again, we don't have to cross that bridge again until we get down to the Lightning or to the Jutland, but it is something now to keep in the back of your mind that you want to do, because that alone, even if you don't have the shortened AP fuse time, it is still a good it's a good thing to get a habit of switching between the two ammunition types, especially when you're fighting a broadside target, or even a battleship broadside target, to go ahead and switch that. But that being said, you do still have, and again, I kind of contradicting myself here because you do actually have the short or improved fuse time on the Acasta. You have the 0.010, so 0.010 second fuse time. And this line has it in general. But it's really going to become apparent when you get up to a faster firing ship like the Jutland Lightning and the Daring especially. That's when you're really going to notice the damage ticks up. So it's not a bad tactic to utilize down here, but because you have the 120s and your HE damage is still pretty good. Like I think your HE DPM overall is still what, 81,600. And in the grand scheme of things, if we look at like what the best HE DPM is, that's the Hill at 112,000. Nicholas Grimyashi, Jaguar Ledois, and then Acosta's coming in at 6. Again, it's very respectable. So that's why I basically what I'm trying to say is you don't have to switch to armor piercing yet this early on in the tier. But if you do want to start working on like getting that mindset down and working on certain scenarios that you can and cannot and you should and should not be using your armor piercing via HE, this would be a good place to start, is basically what I'm trying to say. So, but yes, keep in mind you do have the short fused AP. But again, you can 100% get away with just shooting HE if you want to. But if you really want to min-max it and get the most out of the ship, 100%, you should be switching back and forth between your armor piercing and your HE. So that's all I'm trying to say. I could have said that simpler instead of going this whole diatribe about blah blah and so and so. But yes, you can if you so choose. And then obviously, quick note about the turret firing angles. Sometimes I forget to talk about them sometimes because I just show them in the early in the game. Yeah, there's going to be some issues in regards of the back two, especially this number 4 turret. You're going to see this with the Royal Navy a lot. There's like this overextending deck platform that the 3rd turret usually sits on that kind of inhibits the number 4 turret from getting on the target. And then obviously with the rigging on the number 3 turret can get in the way as well. Just keep that in mind that you are going to be able to showing a decent profile in order to get all 4 turrets to bear. And because you have the 18-second turret traverse, there could be some problems that arise based upon your turret traverse time and obviously the turret firing angles as well, is what I'm trying to say. Going to the torpedoes, and off the get-go, because I don't want to like miss this, your torpedo angles on the ship are not very good, and it comes down to play for like this signal searchlight kind of thing right here, inhibiting the movement forward of the 2nd launcher, and then this smokestack here right behind or right in front of the 1st launcher is really inhibiting it as well. You're gonna have to show a very flat side profile to get your torpedoes off, and given the fact that they're only 6-kilometer range isn't the most impressive. Yes, you can match your full build detectability. But with that being said, when you're in close quarters, I would highly recommend you not utilizing your torpedoes and just solely focus going in your guns. Once you become more and more skilled, absolutely you can fire your guns, then turn while your guns are reloading, launch your torps, and by the time you switch back to your guns, you should be reloaded and be able to continue your DPM and not lose any. For the less experienced players, don't do that, especially in little knife fights, because it's going to cost you, especially when you go flat. You're going to be eating PEDs usually at ships who just have, or the destroyers that just have flat out better torpedo firing angles and or DPM than you. So keep that in mind. But with the 2x4 533 millimeter launchers that do shoot at a max range of 6 kilometers, they reload in 95 seconds and they have a maximum damage of just shy of 12,000. With 59 knot speed and a 1.2 kilometer detectability range. And if we look at that, that's going to give us about a reaction time of 7.6 kilometers with about 5.1 torpedoes a minute. The flood chance is pretty respectable at 196% flood chance. And again, if you don't know all these values and what those means, don't worry about it. At the end of the day, it's just values that create differences between the ships. Like the Jean-Wei, for example, the tier 5 Pan Asian destroyer, does clock in at a 341% flood chance. And what that means is you're taking that number and you're minusing what your torpedo belt percentage reduction is going to be on the enemy team, and it's going to be calculating about the likelihood of you getting a flood on a said ship. And there's more to it than that. That's just like a brief little description. But yeah, you're sitting well below 341% compared to like the Jean-Wei and the 240% of the Kamikaze, for example. So it's still a respectable flood chance, but maybe you won't get as many floods is what I'm trying to say. Because there's so many different calculation and numbers that need to take place in order for you to like say, oh, yep, you're going to get a flood this time. Oh, nope, you're not going to get a flood. So You do have the depth charges, and this is worth noting or talking about again. Again, I really just breeze over the depth charges a lot, especially when I'm talking about any ship. But the reason why I'm going to talk about it with the Royal Navy is that I think the daring line in general has to be in the top three for best uh, submarine hunters in the game for destroyers. And that comes down to your 3 kilometer hydroacoustic search that you do have on the ships. You will always know when to dump your depth charges because even if they're submerged with what the below periscope depth and max depth, you will know when to drop because you're going to get that auto detection at 2 kilometers. And your bomb damage is one of the highest in the game, tier for tier for this line. And then Royal Navy in general. I think the Royal Navy might have the highest bomb damage in the game, I think, without just specing any skills or modules into it, which is 5k base per maximum damage, which is quite incredible. Number of charges, you do have 2, and you have 7 bombs in a charge, so that's 14 deptors you can launch in an interval, what is that, 30 seconds, I believe? And it does take about 40 seconds to reload your depth charges in general. These are phenomenal submarine hunters. So I do recommend that. Again, there is a tactic and a way you should and a way you should not be hunting submarines. If you're ever having to go out of your way in the beginning of the game and charging forward into the battle to hunt a submarine, probably not what you want to do because all that stuff has to do is periscope depth. You shoot him once, or he just keeps you at periscope depth and keeps you spotted. And then the entire enemy team is going to be shooting at you. So again, there's a way to hunt subs and there's a way not to. It's definitely more of a late game thing, unless their enemy submarine royally overextends and fucks up. You don't want to be chasing and trying to hunt subs early game because it's only going to lead to an early back to port for you, sadly. Going into the AA defense, I'll save you guys the hassle here. This is shit. The AA is absolute ass, even though the guns look badass here. Yeah, you have basically no AA. So if you run into a tier 6 carrier, just be ready because it's not going to bode well for you guys. Going into maneuverability, and again, this is worth talking about again. You can kind of see why I'm recommending this line for a beginner entry line, which is a beginner line in general, because there's so many good things about this line that I don't know how players couldn't recommend the ship. Like if anyone players recommending the Shimakaze for you as a beginner line, like I can't help but disagree with that entirely. And I think that's why that play style and why you see the Shimakaze so poorly misplayed universally in the game of World of Warships. Like you know the difference when you see it and when you're playing against it or when you're on the same team as a Shimakaze that actually knows what they're doing. They are a force to be reckoned with. Yes, they're easily counterable because all I have to do is A, be detected, or B, run into a ship that has insanely high DPM that has hands. Um, but we recommend this line, and people are like, well, the Shimakaze exists. It has 15 torpedoes. I want that. But then they don't know what the fuck they're doing. They're never going to utilize their guns. They're playing at range they shouldn't be playing at. And either they die right in the beginning of the game or they live the entire game, have done nothing, and landing no torpedoes. It's a frustrating experience, and I don't understand why people get recommended that line to go down in the beginning. Even if you're learning torpedo boats and you want to be a torpedo-focused destroyer, I still wouldn't recommend the Shimakaze as a torpedo boat focused line for you to start off with. And that's saying something. Like I'd actually probably recommend like the gearing because even the gearing has guns it can fall back on. I mean the Shima does too. Okay, it does. I agree. But the gearing at least has guns, more reliable guns that it can fall back to when you have to knife fight and you're detected, and it reloads its torpedoes quicker. His torpedoes go 16 and a half base. Like it just, I don't know, it just feels like a better platform. That's all I'm trying to say than the Shimakaze, my opinion. Okay. Going into this, the stats of the Acasta, we have 35 knots as the maximum speed. Turning circle radius is 540 meters, and the rudder shift time of 2.9. Now, there's a couple things to dissect here, okay? One, the maximum speed. This line is known for being relatively on the slower side of things, okay? I think the slowest tier 5 destroyer is like the Vaudois and the Sirocco, 33 knots. But again, those get the French speed boosts. So it's like, don't really pay it much mind. The T-22, again, it gets a speed boost. So it's like, not really that to worry about. The Okhotnik, again, I think at 34.5 knot speed. Again, it gets a speed boost. The Acasta at 35 knots does not get a speed boost. Okay? And I know Wargaming, when this line got introduced into the game, they really tried going for a DD line that was known more as a defensive destroyer. And do I believe that? Absolutely. Actually, I do believe that. I'm not saying this thing can't bring the pain offensively, but what it's trying to say is that these ships are very good at holding down sectors and key points. That is what makes this ship really good, or this line. Obviously, it can be easily neutered and countered by plane spotting, radar, the 6 kilometer hydroacoustic search. Uh, Absolutely, it can be countered by that. But you have to understand that if it's just a DD versus DD engagement, locking down a sector based upon its concealment, its fast bursting smokes, and its 3 kilometer hydro that it's going to get, um, is just really, really painful to deal with at times. Um, and again, it can really just lock down a sector completely. Like obviously, you don't at the Acasta level, you don't get the hydro yet. Again, it's tier 5. Um, but with that being said, you still have the general idea. The hydro will come later, and do you really need it at tier 5? Debatable. If you need it, would you want it? Absolutely, but you don't need it, right? The second thing we want to talk about is the rudder shift. Okay, these ships, you have some of the best rudder shifts in the game for destroyers. And why is that? Well, two reasons. One, just flat out base. They're just going to have good rudder shift times. Okay, you're in the top 10 for top rudder shifts time. I think you're coming in like around 8 or 7. Again, not bad. But again, when you climb up the ranks, you can take rudder shift because you basically already have the engine acceleration time baked into the ship. So you don't even get the option to take the propulsion mod in the fourth slot because it's already going to be baked into your vessel. And that being said, the Acasta has, and it's not even close to the fastest acceleration time from a standstill to a top speed. It takes you 6.6 seconds, which is freaking incredible. Again, if you're familiar with like the Minotaur, same ideal, same concept. We now just get it on a destroyer. Um, the next ship the next ship in the whole like Acasta being one, so the number 2 ship with the second best acceleration at tier 5 is the Nicholas with 16.4. So just keep that in mind. Okay. And again, when you get more experienced with your acceleration, you'll know how to engine juke ships way better, and it'll allow you to dodge a lot of shells and throw off not only battleship and cruiser salvos, but especially destroyer salvos as well. Even when you're in close range like that, because you can stop and start on a dime, ladies and gentlemen, on a dime, making the ship incredibly flexible. And again, one thing I want to touch base on too with the torpedoes, and I was kind of going to wait for this so you could see more of a direct, like, I guess, example in game. You can launch these ships single launch, so I can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then both torpedo tubes are reloading. And again, at any given time, I can do 1, 2 single launch and then switch back to normal torpedo dispersion and then launch the last 2 in a normal torpedo dispersion if I so choose. Which again makes the ship really good for ripping around islands and single launching torpedoes, bow-tanking ships in the face and destroying them. And also if they're getting pushed. I think the original concept for this like gimmick was if ships are going to be able to push you, usually they're coming nose in at you. This will allow you to increase your likelihood of landing torpedoes on their nose and hopefully foundering them and sinking them before they actually be able to shoot you and spot you. It's kind of like the idea, I think, is where they came from. My advice, though, and this is a big advice for this thing, and we're going to go over this in my final thoughts. Do not, do not just use your single launch torpedoes when trying to line up torpedo strikes on ships while playing the game, like normally. You will find yourself missing a lot of fucking torpedoes. Even if you're not even using the gray indicator, even if you are using the gray indicator, with the way that the aiming system works, where it's going to make contact, yada yada, and so and so, do not do it. You will have better results just using your normal spread torpedoes than trying to use your single launch torpedoes engaging torpedo strikes just throughout the battle of the game or throughout the game. Just use the normal torpedo spread unless there's certain scenarios that hey, this is a scenario pushing around a corner, someone's pushing me, I need to land these torpedoes. Absolutely, but there's a time and a place for it, and we're going to go over that later on. And last but not least, after this lengthy ass port analysis, because there's so much shit to cover with these guys, we have a detectability by sea of 6.6. Obviously, we take our commander skill, we put them on there, we pop our 10-point captain, and for our last 4 points, we take concealment expert. We go down to 6.0 kilometers, which is actually pretty damn good. Allows us to be able to be stealthy and more flexible in regards of pushing up and utilizing our torpedoes. There is a way to stealth torpedo in the ship. I've talked about it on this channel. Your torpedoes match your detection. Just launch them if a ship is going on a trajectory. Again, looking at your circles on your mini-map, your radiuses of your circles, torpedo circles, knowing that, hey, I can launch my torpedoes at a ship that is 7.3 kilometers away, because if he keeps sailing this general direction with that speed, he's going to run into my 59 knot, 6 kilometer range torpedoes if he continues to do that. Just there's a way. Again, you'll get better and better and better at that skill, but just I want you to understand that there is a way to do it. But if I look at it on paper, you really can't stealth torpedo in this ship just because of the 6 kilometer matching that of your 6 kilometer base detection. That's all. So, okay, guys, and that wraps up the lengthy ass port analysis of the Acasta and essentially the Royal Navy DDs in general. Without further ado, I know you guys want to be entertained, and we'll talk more about the ship specifically while we get into the battle. So let's go ahead and get into that.
Alrighty then. So here we are in battle with our little tier 5 UK destroyer, Acasta. I believe we're in this is a little mini game. I think it's like a little mini game here, and I think we're in tier 7. So once again, the matchmaker just being a little bit wonky for us. And I swear to God, I wasn't playing like at a bad time of the day either. This is what the how the cookie crumbles sometimes, I guess, if you want to quote that movie. So anyways, this is going to highlight a lot of kind of what the ship can do. At the end of the day, guys, this is a tier 5 destroyer. You know what I mean? Like, there's only so much you can talk about her and what she can bring to the table. But again, we're looking at more of what it's kind of starting to look like. This line as it's starting to develop, what this line's going to excel at, what is going to be a hindrance to it. So you're going to start finding out that there is some weaknesses with this line. Obviously, its speed. Once it's committed, it's pretty committed. It can try to fall off and disengage. Radar, if you're caught balls deep, like deep in radar, plane spotting, yada, 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 all this stuff is going to be a weakness for this ship. But if you're going to learn how to mitigate it, that's why we're going to have our smoke screens here with our 6 what do you call these, quick action deploying smoke screens. These things are awesome, and they are going to be your best friend when it comes to these ships. Now, again, you have 6 of them, and I usually find myself within the relative span of a game, I'm kind of going through 4 at a minimum, like all 6 being the maximum, clearly. But again, the numbers on the smoke screen aren't bad at all, and it's worth talking about these short burst smoke generators, right? So you do have 6 of these base, I want to say. If you have superintendent, I believe you get 7. As again, why I recommend picking that up on this ship. Now, quick side note with the captain build before I continue talking about the I guess ship itself. The captain build I have listed out for the Acasta on this specific video is tailored specifically to this ship, and I try to do that with all the ship analysis. I try to make a captain build tailored to that specific ship rather than a generic captain build that you could just bounce, up and bring up the tech tree. Now, why do I do that? Well, one, I told you on this channel, I'm one of the players that actually, when I have commanders for all my ships, and I ever rarely share commanders, if at all. So once it's assigned to my ship or I get a new ship, I'm putting a new commander on that ship and I just regrind it. Now, why is that? Well, it's really fun for me. Personally, I do enjoy that each specific ship you can see based upon my commander how often I play that ship and how much fun I have on that ship. But two, it's realistic. Like, I don't want Gunther Lucians not only driving around my Kurfürst and my Preußen, but also I have to pay the conversion cost to put him on my Hindenburg, and then maybe he goes down to my mines, and like I just don't like that. And players do that because I understand there's a certain part of it that it's like, well, why would I not do it? He's just so fucking strong. If you have the resources and you want to do that, by all means, fucking do that. But like for me, not a chance. I think it's stupid, and I'm just not going to do it. In my opinion, just my opinion, guys. Again, well, when I say stupid, like it's not stupid if you're going to look at it from that regard, but for me and how I perceive it, it's just not the way that I want to play the game. And again, that's what's fun about this game is, if I want to play it a certain way, I can play it a certain way when it comes to putting commanders on specific said ships and bouncing them on specific said ships as well. But going back to the smoke burst, short smoke burst generator, you have 6 usage base, 7 with superintendent. The action time is 10 seconds, and the smoke dispersion time lasts for about 40 seconds with a smoke radius of 600 meters. It's actually not a bad radius, given the fact that I think American smoke is 450, so you can keep that in mind as well. And the cooldown time between each short burst smoke generator that you can have is coming down to 70 seconds. So basically there's a 20-second overlap, or like not overlap, but 20-second lull in between the two of either when the smoke dissipates completely in between the charge and the cooldown time. 20 seconds. That's actually not bad. And again, another reason why I recommend you take the this line in general as like a beginner DD line. It's so incredibly flexible, and it's only going to get stronger and stronger and stronger. Now here's a good example of the single launch torpedoes. Probably shouldn't have launched him here. All he had to do was alter his maneuver just a little bit, and I'm gonna miss all my torpedo strikes, right? You have to be careful when doing it, because if you line up a strike and you use all of your single launch torpedoes at the target and you miss them all, it's almost a wasted torpedo salvo. It's a completely wasted torpedo salvo, and you might as well not even launch your torpedoes at all. And now I'm waiting or cooling down for 95 seconds. So you have to be careful. That's why I highly recommend, I would say 80 to 90% of the time, just use your normal torpedo spread. You're going to actually hit more torpedoes that way than if you did with the 1 in whatever chance of doing your single launch torpedoes. And here I go again, using the single launch torpedoes. This is a big mistake that I see a lot of players, including myself at times, do. Only if they pushing into you at certain kilometers and ranges do you want to do that, because if you do it and they maneuver ever so slightly, they're going to dodge completely dodge your torpedo salvo. So it's really not worth it, guys. Really, really not worth it. So, excuse me. What else is there to talk about? Obviously it's a smaller game, so you have to tailor and factor in different various play styles, and make different decisions based upon where the enemy's deployment is and what it's looking like as the battle develops. But here's an Agincourt, I believe, pushing up. Again, we are using our single launch torpedoes here. Probably, again, if I could go back, I wouldn't be using it here as of yet. I understand what I was thinking here. Like, obviously, the Agincourt knows there's at least a minimum of 2 destroyers in that smoke, potentially 1. He's going to want to push in, right? Wait, I get it, but now, of course, now he knows there's 2. So he's going to want to come in, and he's not really going to show a side profile at all. So I was like, okay, this is going to increase my chances of landing a torpedo on his nose. But again, I didn't launch them far enough inward for turning in, so I don't think I'm going to get any torpedo hits. If I do get some torpedo hits, good for me, because again, this replay was about I am going to get torpedo hits, right? Yeah, for about a couple weeks ago. Yeah, so again, look, it worked out. It panned out. Okay, but again, if he would have maneuvered and did a hard to port or starboard, whatever, right away, I don't think I would have landed a single torpedo again. So it's a gamble, and a gamble paid off. Okay, that's all I'm trying to say. So there's a time and a place to do it. Obviously, I'm using it way too frequently, and you shouldn't use it as frequently as I am. That's all I'm trying to say, because I think you'll actually get better results. But again, now we're at this range of 5.4, and he's showing a side profile. Okay, now why would I not want to use my single launch torpedoes? Because it's going to increase the likelihood of me landing the torpedoes where I want them to land. Of course, obviously, do I hit the mountain here with these? Yeah, good terrain. Yeah, nice. Good stuff. You love to see that. So, frustrating. I wish Wargaming would fix that. Or at least tell me, hey, your torpedoes can't travel here because it's going to smoke an island that you can't see. But I digress. Trying to think of what else I can talk about the Acasta. I think I've really touched on like a lot of major parts about this ship, and what she does relatively well. Obviously, you've seen examples of the acceleration. You've seen a buttload of times of me using the single launch torpedoes. You've seen the fire starting potential of the ship. What I have, that's 7. I can't really tell up there. Yeah, the ship is actually a little fun package, especially if you find yourself in a top tier matchup with the Acasta. I do find the ship to be relatively quite strong, and it is something you're going to notice as you continue to climb up the tech tree with the Royal Navy DDs. Like, every DD for tier, it is pretty strong. I know when this line originally came out, there were 2 ships in particular that were just incredibly strong for their tier. One being the Jervis at tier 7. Obviously, that ship had to get nerfed and tailored down to now having a 6.4 kilometer detection. I think back in the day it had 6.1 or 6 kilometer detection, which made it incredibly strong, which was awesome. And then the Jutland. I know back in the day, I can't remember exactly what ranked season it was, but before they have the new ranked format, so when it was still old ranked format, that ship got me to rank 1 so many times, at least twice that I can recall off my head. That ship in particular really did carry me hard, and it gave me so much flexibility. I think you had like 5.7 kilometer detection. You had like a 3-second reload on that thing, and obviously it's been nerfed since then. You still get the 5.7, but I believe your reload is like 4.5 or 5, so you can't just go full reload or full torpedo, because it's like I think you have to take the reload now specifically because before I could take the torp reload, my torp reload was fast, and my guns were already firing at like 3 seconds. Now it's like 4.5 or something base. I can't remember exactly the exact numbers, but now you basically have to spec into your reload if you want to get adequate DPS numbers or DPM numbers like you used to have. So. But yeah, like again, this line has so many fun and strong ships in it that again, I can't recommend this line enough for just players in general. I mean, obviously, if you haven't gotten it yet, you should be getting it. If you're experienced in other DD lines, then you're going to find experience in this line. And that being said, if you're a newer DD player and you want to get into playing DDs, again, I cannot recommend this line enough too because this line just has so many things going for it. And again, when you climb up the tech tree, it's going to be an enjoyable experience at a lot of tiers. At a lot of tiers. And I didn't even touch on the tiers below the Acasta or the tier 3 or the tier 4. Like there are some fun ships in this line. And I do hope that, again, big recommendation on the channel, don't free XP your way past any ship. It's not good for the, I guess, overall learning of the game. You really need to learn the game before you go ahead and, you know, like each, what I like to say is each ship in the tech tree is a stepping stone, and you're building your, I guess, overall play style and identity through each tier. So if you're skipping tiers just to fast track your way up to tier 10, well, I got two things for you. One, it's not better and it's not as good as you think it is. And two, the game's only going to get harder and you're going to run into more skilled players. So the overall gaming experience or your overall gaming experience isn't going to be any more fun and you're actually going to be detrimental and more of a liability to your team at that point. So I really, really, really can't stress enough. Do not skip tiers, please. All right, guys, and here we are back in port. Gonna do my final thoughts now of the Acasta. One, first of all, it's a fun ship. I do really much enjoy this ship from, a stern to butt kind of vibe. I think that she is a excellent little boat. She has decent enough guns with her 120 mils firing every 5 seconds. Her torpedoes aren't any slouch either. Yes, they're only 6 kilometers, but at this tier, you can 100% make that work, right? Her short burst smoke generators allow a lot of flexibility and it allows you to get into certain advantageous positions, fall off detection when you so choose, and just allows for an overall, I guess, more relaxed game style as you so choose because of that main reason, right? Another one for her is her improved acceleration. This actually plays into your advantage. Yes, you don't have a speed boost. That does suck. I understand that. But with your acceleration, how improved it is in regards of stopping and starting, going to full engine power, to half, to slow, to reversing, it is so incredibly quick. You will be able to juke a lot of enemy shells because of this and frustrate the living hell out of players. Again, it's a skill that's going to be it's going to be self-taught and learned, but once you have it down, wow, it is going to be incredibly frustrating. And you don't have a citadel because you're a destroyer. So you can do this. And I mean, yes, you can still take massive damage, but the likelihood of the one little shell hitting your ass and citadeling like you would get in the Minotaur, you don't have that. So you don't have to worry about that, right? Um, and finally, another big advantage that this ship, in my opinion, it isn't even her single launch torpedoes, because like as you saw from the gameplay footage, how many of those did I miss, right? Yikes. Another big advantage that this ship does have is her concealment, and this does carry down the entire line. Yes, you have a couple ships, like I think a couple of names like the Jervis, that's like 6.4, right? I think the Icarus might have like 6.1. I mean, you have ships that are, like, again, 6.1 isn't like highly detectable, but if that's the worst, if 6.4 kilometers is the worst we have to work with in this line in regards of concealment, we're laughing, ladies and gentlemen. So the concealment allows you to get into those positions, catch a lot of ships off guard, so you can get in and torpedo strike and or just fire at enemy destroyers. A lot of DDs, again, you are a defensive DD, meaning that you can lock down areas and kind of be that bully in caps. And again, with your short fused AP, that is another massive advantage that you have. You can really absolutely shit on enemy destroyers and lightly armored cruisers too, just because of that. Like, yeah, you don't have any improved ricochet angles as far as I'm aware of. Maybe you do. I don't know. I didn't really look at that. Probably should have looked at that. It doesn't look like there is any visible. Yeah, there is no improved ricochet angles on the ship. It's completely 45 to 60. But you do have the short fused AP. That is apparent. You do have the, what is it, the 0.010 second fuse time. And maybe that's not short fused. Maybe that's just short or fused. I think short fuse is at 0.005. Maybe. Yeah, the daring has 0.010 second fuse time, so it does have a little bit improved. Again, maybe most destroyers do have this regardless for the fact, but again, you want to be making use of this. This is going to be huge, especially because at the daring you have 113 millimeter guns. Yes, you could get away with it. We've touched on this. We've talked about 5 minutes about this. You have 120 millimeter guns down at tier 5. You don't necessarily need to shoot AP, and I would say for newer players, I really recommend not. But again, it's something you can start, adding tools in your toolkit, and you'll eventually, when you get to those certain set tiers where you have, theoretically have to utilize this, it just comes more naturally to you. So, anyways, guys, that is my deep dive analysis of the Acasta. Fun little ship. Excellent line. I can't wait to review the rest of this line for you guys. Again, I will be trickling videos out here on the Down the Line series, and we'll be going from there. So, anyway, stay tuned for more, guys. Please like and subscribe, and I will catch you on the next one. Peace out.